How do you solve a problem? You look at the information, evaluate it, synthesize it, find a solution, and implement that solution. Each day we are faced with problems, and we have to find ways to work through them. For people with depression, solutions to problems are not always clear, making the problems difficult to overcome. Depression itself is a problem, and if one cannot rationalize his or her own situations, day-to-day life can be disrupted or destroyed. Everyone experiences depression to some degree, but how do you tell who the true sufferers are?
A warning sign. I missed the good part, then I realized I started looking and the bubble burst. I started looking for excuses. Come on in, I've gotta tell you what a state I'm in. I've gotta tell you in my loudest tones that I started looking for a warning sign. When the truth is I miss you.
You know, we have this huge advertising campaign going on to sell depression to the American public.
Does the depression medication industry have an incentive to perpetuate the overdiagnosis of depression?
Every company wants to encourage a desire for their product, because the more people that want it, the more they can make and the more money they will make. So they definitely have an incentive to encourage people to want it and try and sell their ad. And I think that's one of the reasons, you'll see TV ads where they're like, do you feel this way? Try this drug. Talk to your doctor about this drug. And they have the guys in the white coats that aren't necessarily doctors but look like it.
Talk therapy is always the preferred method because you can or psychotherapy, you can essentially work through a lot of the underlying issues that are causing the depression, because a lot of it has to do with cognitions and how people are ruminating about different things in their lives. You can get at those problems through psychotherapy, but most people aren't patient enough to take the time to do that. So they fall back on medication as kind of a way of coping in the interim. The best combination is combining some drug therapy with psychotherapy over time to get to permanent results rather than just taking care of symptoms for temporarily.
Western society, we have this idea that if you have a problem, you need a medicine to fix it. So our medicine's a lot more focused on addressing the problem through some type of drug. And so that's one reason it's like, it's not, the marketing anyway points out that, hey, it's not anything you can control.
Researchers found that the effects of the drugs were no better than those achieved by giving patients a sugar pill.
They found that these medications were no better than a dummy pill or a placebo in people with mild and moderate depression.
Some people say that they can't live without Prozac, Paxil, and other drugs, but a new study says that the pills may not be helping them as much as they think.
Pharmaceutical companies pay a tremendous amount of money in advertising and legislation, so they're constantly trying to get their drugs on the market. And so just in the last 10 years, you start seeing direct advertisement to consumer for things like antidepressants. So you see those on television all the time now.
Antidepressants can increase suicidal thoughts and behaviors in children, teens, and young adults.
Daily life and relationships suffer. You just feel so alone. These are some symptoms of depression.
Is the fact that depression medication is readily available a good thing, or does it contribute to an attribution culture?
I think I can see how it's a good thing, but I think it can also be something that's bad, because a lot of people tend to say like, I have depression or whatever, and it kind of becomes a cop-out, an excuse. I really wouldn't know because depression is very sensitive. Like, I'm not gonna point a finger. You don't have depression. I mean, who am I to say? Yeah.
You'll get mild forms of depression that last anywhere from just a couple of hours to a couple of days, and then people usually generally get over that and move on with their lives, and they feel better after time on their own. Moderate levels usually are more persistent, so people are feeling depressed for weeks at a time. They wind up seeking medical help for that and going on antidepressants for short periods of time just to get through whatever's going on with them, usually high levels of anxiety that cause them to eventually become depressed. And then the more severe cases are people who struggle throughout their lives with very heavy bouts of depression where they're spending months at a time being very, very depressed.
I think for those type of people, it would, they need to learn to overcome it and become advocates for it. So, for example, there's a difference between suffering from a certain kind of condition and playing that condition or ineptitude or whatever it is, you know, like hiding behind it. But you also have people who have integrated that component into their lives and they try to make something out of it.
Well, learned helplessness is the idea that you are experiencing a lot of trauma, especially early on in life during early development of your growth process. You're experiencing either some trauma or you're experiencing negative experiences which reinforce this idea that the world is a hostile place, that you can't get ahead no matter what you do, and that no matter how hard you try, you will always have a bad outcome. And when you get into that mindset and start thinking that, anybody can become depressed.
My first advice to students is don't hold things in. The worst enemy of depression is when people isolate themselves and they don't talk to anybody about it. I have to say I'm not a fan, of medication, but in some cases when students are chronically depressed and they get to the point where they're not able to function and they're suicidal, absolutely, I think that it's absolutely mandatory for their well-being. Throughout the years, I have had students be on medication, and I know that if it wasn't because of medication, they would not be able to survive. So if their life is on the line, I say there's no choice. But it shouldn't be the only treatment. They should also definitely contemplate going to a therapist. I don't see how somebody could be treated for depression without a number of things.
In that sense, it's not really acknowledging the condition exists, but not giving themselves an excuse, as a cop-out. It's like, well, this is the best I could do considering I had this so-and-so thing. But it also increasing awareness of it, and if they recognize or people who are just saying random things or something that's insensitive, just calling them out. It's like, hey, no, this is a real issue.
Sometimes we see what we want to see and feel what we want to feel. It's an easy way out. It's easy to pass the blame onto medication companies, media, and other institutions because so much of what depression has become can be attributed to them. However, we all play a part in this problem, and it's important to step back and accept our responsibility. The truth is that there isn't a sale without the buy-in. Depression's not an easy topic to talk about because it's very real and so many people are severely affected by it. Everyone's story is different, and sometimes personal will is just not enough. However, it's our responsibility to draw the line between treating ourselves and allowing ourselves to becoming a victim to sorrow. The problems that we face can build up and overwhelm us over time. These problems not only define us, but challenge us and test our ability to solve them. Most importantly, they present us with a choice. Fix the problem or let it destroy us. The question is, what will you choose?
Is that a star in the sky? voices softly.